Shall we get straight into our top story
Let's
right away? And in a major blow to Keir Starmer, 56 Labour MPs defied the party leader last night to vote for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. 10 of Labour's frontbenchers, including Jess Phillips, Afzal Khan and Yasmin Qureshi, even quit their roles yesterday in order to back the motion introduced by the Scottish National Party.
And there are fears that the rebellion could spread even further, doing major damage to the party's election hopes. A Savanta poll published today suggested almost half of Muslim Labour supporters from 2019 said Starmer's handling of the Middle East conflict made them feel more negatively towards the party.
With us in the studio for the next hour is the Sun's excellent political columnist, Trevor Kavanagh. Welcome, Trevor. Well, as we were just saying, both party leaders having an absolute nightmare this week, but the Keir Starmer, the rebellion against him, is pretty significant. I would have thought a few more of these shadow cabinet ministers might have gone along with what he wanted, but they won't.
Well, at any other time, this would be the story of the week,
Yes,
wouldn't it?
yeah.
And all eyes will be focused on Labour and its problems, which are going to be ongoing right through to the point when they eventually win the election and after. But, you know, the whole publicity issue has been mopped up by the Tories because, as ever, they're at war with each other and making mistakes and being second-guessed by an unelected Supreme Court.
I mean, how dangerous do you think this sort of disunity is, given that a lot of people expect the Labour Party to form the next government, on Britain's influence on the world stage? Is it nothing? Is it just something that we all get swept up in as journalists and Westminster watchers? Or is it something that other countries look at and think, oh, there's weakness there, the tail is wagging the dog?
Well, I think that the Muslim vote is very important to the Labour Party and it's been cultivated as such. It's one of the reasons why I think we've had the open door immigration policy. These are seen as reliable Labour votes, but suddenly they're not so reliable, and there is a lot of anger out there. We're going to face another really serious weekend of protests with demos, about 150 of them all over the country. I mean, they're bringing the capital city to a halt every weekend now, and they will, I think, reflect this in their votes at the election. But at the moment, when you're 20, 25, maybe 30% ahead in the polls, you've got a lot of slack to play with here.
Yeah.
The Tories are not in any position to fight back. Yeah. But they don't want a ceasefire either, so they're not going to move to the Tories.
But that's the thing, isn't it? What Keir has calculated here, just as, well, Rishi Sunak seems to have given up with the Red Wall, but in the past he's tried to appeal to them. That's the Tory line. And, of course, Keir Starmer's job is to appeal to the Blue Wall. And hence, I think, his firm stance on no ceasefire. But his calculation, as you say, before we get lost in wonder about him suddenly finding a backbone and standing up for what he believes, he has calculated he can lose 5%, maybe even more, in the popularity polls and still win the election. And these 10 highly principled shadow cabinet ministers who have quit on moral grounds, no doubt all represent heavily Muslim constituencies. So welcome to Westminster, where it's basically a numbers game, isn't it?
It is, and I think you made the point there, which is absolutely right, that this will reflect well on Keir Starmer. It will show that he's prepared to stand up for the right thing. I mean, he's stood up for the right thing in the past, even though he's been having directly opposite views only a short time earlier. He's a man of somersaults and U-turns throughout his rise from a left-wing lawyer to the leader of the Labour Party. So, but nonetheless, this will go down well in Europe, in the West, in America and elsewhere, where everyone is saying that you can't have a ceasefire while there are still hostages in Gaza.
So he's being prime ministerial.
He's being statesmanlike.
Yeah, I mean, but can that hold? I mean, we've had a long history now of the UK being relatively interventionist, being a very strong ally to America, being almost, you know, playing that role of the West being the police for democracy and peace in the world. Could that now come to an end when you look at these sorts of splits in the Labour Party and changing voter demographics?
Well, I'm not sure that the bulk of the British population is in support of the Palestinian flag wavers. And I think that as long as Hamas insists on holding those hostages, all the sympathy for those children who are being killed inadvertently in the process of the Israeli attack on Hamas in Gaza, that will have to go by the board as long as the hostages are still held. And there's no way that the Hamas leaders are going to take part in a ceasefire anyway. So, I mean, the whole thing is purely academic.
Yeah, it's interesting that, isn't it? A bit, people keep saying, oh, why doesn't Israel call a ceasefire? Why doesn't it ceasefire? They neglect to reflect on the fact that their opponents, their enemies, Hamas, don't want a ceasefire either. So you've got two sides of a war, don't want a ceasefire. So hence, this international call for a ceasefire is, as I keep saying, the kind of the global debating society that makes no difference to reality.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Well, let's